Hey guys, welcome back. We're taking a look at Solana. For those of you who watched my previous video and actually listened to it, you would have been expecting this. So what we talked about was we're seeing this rejection at around the $89 area, which we saw from multiple days. Firstly, the massive reversal. Secondly, the multiple times where we see it rejecting. So on the 7th, on the 8th, on the 9th. So we were constantly saying that there were resistance, and it's very likely that the buyers that were coming in are not that optimistic, or at least they don't have the momentum yet to bring us through. So we are going to be looking at potential selling as well. Now, whether or not this selling is going to take us all the way down to 50, 65, that's obviously a different area. We'll talk about a different liquidity area in a second, but we were going to be expecting this kind of 4, 5, 6% move, in which we did. Another reason for why I said this is because previously what really allowed Solana to have this massive flush was also because we broke below the 89 area. So this is why it's important. And you can already see how we have the rejection. We're down 4.74% today. And we obviously have the and that's off of the rejection of this $89 area. If for those of you who are wanting to learn how to short-term trade, so day trade, again, I'm giving out this blueprint pretty much on this channel. We talked about trader rejection at 89, and you can literally see the setup as we get closer towards 89. There was a rejection, and we always talk about how the pins of a candle showcases a lot. And you can see from here the rejection as we get close towards 89. We see sellers coming in, and then the price just fall downward. This was a very, very simple trade to take. A simple take profit would have been that previous low that was created over here at 82, which it would have then reached. We've actually, in fact, gone lower than that. Now, all of these things that we're talking about now, this isn't me saying it hindsight. This is not me trying to justify what's happening on the chart. This is something that even prior to this whole candle movement over here, even prior to this, I talked about this already in our last video. And this is what we said with how short-term trades, when you just understand levels, when you're patient, it's very, very simple. And this was just a textbook move. Now let's talk about the liquidity area that we are saying to understand whether or not Solana can still go lower. So for that, you have to understand multiple different things. And of course, I'm here to make it as easy as possible for you to understand. Firstly, we have to realize where Bitcoin is going. Now, you don't have to watch my Bitcoin videos. I will highly recommend you to do though. But what we have said is Bitcoin is still fighting for this $70,000 area. Currently, it's sitting around 68,000. It may change because I haven't looked at it for 30 minutes, but it's sitting around 68,000. And depending on when you watch it, it's obviously going to be different. But it's showcasing how it's not able to go above 70K. It's showcasing how it's obviously facing that rejection. And so there is still that possibility of Bitcoin going back down to that 60K area, and even worse, go lower than that. So if we're going to be looking at Bitcoin going down, you don't even have to look at the technical analysis of Solana. You will know that Solana will fall along with it, to which we talked about this potential low, which we saw of 67.48. That's the one area. But another important area that we obviously mentioned, which I thought we were going to reach last time, is the 65.54. And so it's why I've always said these levels that I give out, do not use them to the pinpoint precision. Please understand that there is still a discrepancy in the levels that you should be looking at. So I say 65.54, but you could add $1, you could add $2 to it. It's just that around that area, you should be wary. And so firstly, it's about understanding if Bitcoin were to fall, Solana will fall along with it, to which we're pinpointing to around this $65 area or that previous low of 67.48. Now, if we forget about Bitcoin, we just look at Solana, firstly, we're not seeing enough strong buyers. They're trying to take us above, which we talked about here. You can see it multiple times in the hourly. They're trying to take us above into this 89, but they're failing. What's even more important is every time they failed, it seemingly looks like they are leaving and the seller is getting a little bit bigger. And I can explain this very easily. Firstly, when we saw all the buyers coming in, when we saw Bitcoin go to 60K and then bounce all the way back up, you see how this momentum took us. And that was the first attempt to break above 89, in which we failed. And then we saw the price. And if you want to count this minor pullback, because this was technically the first pullback from the rejection of 89, it's this very, very small area that we're looking at here. Now, I don't normally count it, but if you want to be extremely precise, because technically we then try to attempt again, you can. But so this is the first pullback. Now the pullback I'm looking at, whilst you can count this as 2 attempts, is this. This was the first rejection from breaking the resistance. And we saw that this is two things. Firstly, the buyers who took us from here to all the way here, who then want to take us to 89. When they realized they couldn't break 89, they started selling. And then that's how we saw the price go down here. So you can see it works for both cases. So firstly, they sold, the price went down here. When it was again attempted again, it realized it couldn't break past, they sold again. But also, it was this at this point when people realized that $89 area is also an area to short because they can get that swing. Because you're looking at an 89. Firstly, when you look at here, it was already a 3% move, and then it went 5%. For those people who are swing or short-term day trading with leverage, this was something that was obviously very, very lucrative. And then what we saw was, so people started then buying up again because they realized that this was still very cheap. It was still a discount. The sellers weren't strong. Yes, it was rejecting, but it wasn't strong. Evidently, you see this when the buyers came in. And then as you see, when the price reject, they kept on attempt. So this is when buyers really tried to break us through. And when they realized they couldn't, we saw the price fall, which was lower than previously. So this was still the same logic. The logic was when buyers realized we couldn't break above 89, they started selling because they're here for the short-term movement. You have to realize these guys, for the short-term trade, they're called traders for a reason. They're not here to hold on for a year or 2 years. A lot of people are here to take that short. They're trying to ride the trend. So when they realize that this was a buying trend, they ride it. When they realize multiple times they couldn't break through, they get rid of it. And then the short sellers, once again, the trend riders decide to take this trend and then they shorted it. And that's why we saw the price go down here. Now, still at this point, when you take a look at Bitcoin, you take a look at the crypto market, we were seeing rejections, we were seeing profits being taken, we were seeing people selling, but it wasn't yet showing that it was mass selling. So then we saw another attempt. We were still seeing buyers all throughout. You can see this from the volatility. You can see this from the pins. And then when they try to do it again, you can see how this is working again. When the buyers are trying to take us back up to break this 89, when they saw the rejection, they left us again. And then we've created an even lower low. So this was a lower low to that previous lower low to that previous lower low. And so what we are seeing right now is an exhaustion of buyers. Now, this exhaustion is very different than before, but it's still an exhaustion of buyers. But we're also seeing how the short sellers are trying to pile in right now. Now, the reason why I say that what we're seeing over here is a difference in exhaustion of buyers than over here and over here is because the time it took for the price to get to and create this low. What we are seeing right now was that previously, these guys were buyers who tried to really catch on to the trend. So the moment they realized there was no bullish trend, they just sold. And that's why we saw the price go down as fast as it did. And the same applies for over here as well. However, right now, what we are seeing is a pile, firstly, of short sellers who are realizing that there is an opportunity at this $89 area where they can get a swing trade, wherever it's to this level, is why we're seeing the buy come up right now. Because firstly, they don't know what other level there is below 82. They don't know what other level there is because there isn't any clear indications over here. So what they're doing is that they're taking profit at around this area. It's why you see when the price first fell down to this area, you can see the price was being brought up. You can see why the price started recovering a bit. So that's why we talked about these trendsetters, trend riders. But then secondly is slow. This was a very slow movement to this area. You can see when we first made this low, it took only around 5 candles. This took a consecutive of over, let's take a look. This took around, what we're looking at here, 19 bars. So this was done through 19 hours. This was done in 4-5 hours. So you can see the difference in that. And that's why we're seeing the exhaustion of sellers, but they're still trying to buy in. It's just that right now they realize they can't break 89. So what they're doing is that they're slowly selling, but they want to sit on the sidelines. Previously, before, it was, I'm going to wait for that opportunity for that to break out, and I'm going to get in as soon as possible. Now is, it doesn't look like I'm going to break 89. I will slowly watch what's happening. I'll let the guys sell. I'll let the short sellers pile in, but then I'm waiting. So the moment they look at a reversal, the moment perhaps it's here around 79, perhaps it's 80. We don't know yet, which once again, I'll of course update when it happens. But When they see it happen at this level, when they see that, okay, this is where suddenly all these whales are coming in and I want to ride the trend, we're going to see a massive reversal to back to this $89 area again. But right now we're seeing exhaustion, is why I said we could be seeing an even lower area. But if you watched my last video, you would have known that we were facing rejections at 89. You would have been prepared to take the short trade and vice versa, take the long trade as well. Now the long trade is obviously very risky because you don't know where they're going to take profit, but the short trade was very simple and it was in plain sight because it was a rejection off of 89. As always, none of this is financial advice, and I'll catch you guys next time.